Good afternoon. Thank you, Amy. Thank you all for joining us on this warm Sunday afternoon, and enjoy the air condition for just a little bit. We'll go back. My name is Tom Smith. It's my real name. It's the only joke I've got. Somewhat of a joke. I run the Leica Akademie for North America. Yeah, that's right. I live in Florida. It's a witness protection thing, but again, I have the great honor and distinction of moderating and introducing this panel and these gentlemen. Though I have to say, after our quick lunch, my main role is to set the stage and get out of the way, because they have incredible stories and an incredible history to share with you of projects, and that's our main focus, long-term projects and the impact of long-term projects, the importance of long-term projects, not only in terms of defining who you are as a photographer, but also in some cases, as we'll find out, reinventing the kind of photography that you want to do. I'll just jump right in here and tell you that Doug Menuez has the kind of bio that only a life in photography can produce. A world traveler, has been to the North Pole, has had tea with Stalin's daughter, and held a chunk of Einstein's brain. These are things that not everyone gets to do. Only photographers have a chance.
I just made that up.
Right.
That's true.
He's been a freelance photographer since 1981. His work has appeared in Time, Life, Fortune, Newsweek, just to name a few. And throughout the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, documented any major news event or story of the day: homelessness in America, AIDS crisis, and as well as over time developing a loyal corporate following and moving into advertising. And I don't want to take too much away from the story you're going to share, but our great opportunity today, is to find out how he came to document and chronicle the digital revolution in Silicon Valley. And that really is the subject of his fourth book, The Fearless Genius. So we'll go into the details about that. And my friend here, Mark Mann, is one of the most in-demand, popular celebrity and advertising photographers working today. And he has a style that is both distinct and honest and direct, as well as being contemporary and timeless, which is hard to pull off, yet he seems to do it. To the point that Esquire hired him commissioned him to document for their 80th anniversary, 80 men from 1 to 80 over a year-long project, and we'll go in depth into this. The goal here is for both of them to present their work, generate questions from you at the end, so this will become interactive and much more of a conversation as time goes on. With that said, I'll turn it over to Doug.
Thank you, Tom, for that great introduction. And you took a lot of my punchlines, though. Thank you guys for coming. It's really great. I think we only have 40 minutes, so I'm just going to jump right in. The key questions in my mind that you may be asking is, how do you find a long-term project? How do you fund that project? Why do you do long-term projects, and why are they important? And then how do you make a living from that long-term project? And I don't know the answers to any of those, sorry. We got to go. And I'll try to touch on it along the way. I'm going to show you, if I have time, 3 different projects, but also I wanted to just say, how do you find long-term projects? Tom and I had the great fun to do a workshop this last weekend in LA, and Tom and the producer got us access to the original Dogtown Boys. So I threw this picture in because I had never in my career, 30 years of flying around the world, 200,000 miles a year, shot skateboarding. Somehow I didn't get that assignment. I don't know how. And I did do sports for 10 years for USA Today, but I'd never shot skateboarding. And I fell in love with this. And I really think this could be my next long-term project. So that's how you find them. You find something you're really passionate and really, really excited about. Otherwise, you'll never finish it. You have to totally be obsessed with it. That's your litmus test. If you can't stop thinking about it, that's probably a good thing to try to work on. This is another project that's dear to my heart that I started in 2011. It's about the sayings and proverbs in Brazil. My wife is Brazilian, and I realized after 30 years of marriage that I'll really never understand her or her culture. Eu falo português. It doesn't matter if you speak the language. I'm not from there. But these sayings and proverbs give you a little teaser window into the culture. These are fishermen in the Northeast, and they have these really traditional boats that are very dangerous. They go out in the Atlantic and they swim, and they fish for 3 days. And I went out on the boat briefly, and I said, take me back, because it was so dangerous. I couldn't hold the camera in one hand and hang onto the mast. And I told him, this is a really dangerous boat. How do you do this? And he said, oh, my father has a saying for that. And I'm like, wait, let me get my DP over. And he says, o passarinho come Pedro sabe o cu que tem, which translates literally as, the bird that eats stone knows his own asshole. I'm like, what? Oh, you mean you wouldn't sail the boat if you couldn't sail the boat? Yeah, you wouldn't eat the stone if you couldn't shit the stone. Anyway, this is how you kind of can make a living a little bit. The long-term project itself should generate income if it's done right, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. But having been known for doing long-term documentary projects, I got this assignment to go around the world for a year, shooting these really interesting cultural figures, celebrities, whatever, for the Iconoclast show. And this is Charlize Theron in the Congo. So that was a long-term project that paid advertising rates. Again, I got a call from Leo Burnett in Dubai. They knew of my project about Mexico and tequila, and they wanted me to come to Dubai and live there for a month and document the culture. And I got access to the rich and the poor and so forth. So this led to a month-long advertising campaign, and I shot whatever I wanted, and they pulled ads from that. So these are two indirect results. By doing the books, by the blood, sweat, and tears of the personal work, people call you. Not always, but that could happen. So you mentioned The Fearless Genius. Honestly, this book has caused me a lot of pain and difficulty, but the last thing Steve Jobs said to me was, don't worry, Doug, you'll have fun with these pictures someday. And I hear that in my dreams, and it keeps me going. I think there's no one that's ever done a really long-term project that hasn't asked themselves, what am I doing? Because you end up you shouldn't put your savings into it, but I ended up doing that in this project. But what we're trying to do now is prove that we could create a cross-media project that generates revenue on different levels. We're doing a documentary next. We're doing a TV series. The exhibitions have been traveling continuously since 2014. The book is now published in 7 countries, it's in 17 languages, and over 100 million people have seen it through all the media and viral press we've got.
Did you say it's just out of print?
Well, I don't know if it's out of print yet. We haven't been able to find it on Amazon yesterday, so we're worried that it's sold out.
I got all the last ones.
God bless you, man.
Check eBay.
I hadn't signed those. Anyway, the project began when Steve announced he was going to build a supercomputer to transform education. And I had just come home from shooting the famine in Ethiopia for Newsweek and was so devastated. I was looking for something positive to cover, some kind of story that would make me feel like it was worth being alive. And there was hope for the human race. But if Steve was going to transform education, which I knew was, as a journalist, was the heart of every social issue, then that was worth covering. I wasn't into tech, but I was really interested in what he would do with that. So I got permission from him to document his process of innovation. And this is the day he invited Ross Perot in and asked him for $20 million, and he took him to this abandoned warehouse, and he told him, we're going to build the world's most advanced robotic assembly line. No human hands will touch it, and we'll sell 10,000 computers a month, and Ross wrote him the check. He could be a total pain in the ass, but the thing about Steve is we have this mythology that he was either a genius or an asshole. He was layered. He was a complex human being. With him, it was really about trust. He had to know you had done your homework. He wanted people that would stand up to him. We only had one argument in 3 years, and I was able to win the argument because I had watched him work with engineers, and as long as you were willing to die for your idea and you knew what we were talking about, you could change his mind. This is Steve's nemesis, who he decimated in the press for years, John Scully, and at this moment, the story hasn't really come out what really happened between John and Steve. You'll have to see my movie. But we just interviewed John Scully using the Leica SL. But John, after Steve left, grew the company from $800 million to $8 billion a year in revenue. And it got me thinking, when he started hiring women managers and women engineers started showing up, and I started to think about diversity because I was a beta tester. And the product actually sucked. And as soon as they started getting women engineers and people of color and diversity, different worldviews around the table. The engineers fighting with the product marketing managers. The features changed. The product got easier. It got better because there were different opinions. The arguments got tougher. But it was sort of like the question was, why does diversity matter? Is it social justice? Of course. But it's power. Whoever writes the code controls the machine, which impacts your behavior and the entire culture. Russell Brown, the creative director, it was like a new culture was being developed with a new language. This is symbolic. That's how they would have sex if they could have sex. Bill Gates announcing no one should ever pay more than $50 for a photo. Thanks, Bill. These are Pueblo Indians building the world's most advanced robotic chip. The most advanced chip at the Intel fab in New Mexico. So who will be the next Steve Jobs? And where will she come from? Well, she could come from anywhere because there's a whole new batch of hungry entrepreneurs and innovators that we're starting to shoot now for the next generation of innovators. And what I'm seeing is little shoots of the idealism that was there in the early days. The people I photographed knew they'd make money, but it was secondary. They really did want to improve our lives with the technology. Unfortunately, they were so successful, it became an unsustainable gold rush and crashed, which is why I ended the project in 2000.
Before you move into the tequila story, I just want to back up one moment, and can you share with us, two questions. How many photographers working or aspirational photographers in terms of you want to make a living as a photographer do we have in the room? All right, most of you. Good, good. All right, that'll inform what we talk about then. It's always about access. How did you get access to the story?
I have a really good friend, Rick Smolin, who basically I wouldn't probably have a career without. I don't know if Rick is here. Rick, are you here? I learned almost everything I know about book publishing from Rick. But he introduced me to someone really important that worked very closely with Steve. And she got me a meeting with Steve. And I said, I want to document your comeback. And he looked at me and he said, what do you mean? I said, well, I want to show your process of innovation, how you do what you do with your team. And I want to do it for the whole time from building, from invention to shipping. And he started to make this face. And I said, and I want to do it for Life magazine. And I want total access 24/7 to your office, the R&D lab, the boardroom. I just asked for everything because I knew he was going to say no. Weirdly, he said yes. And he smiled and he said, let's get to work. And he walked out. So, like I said, it was about trust. He was introduced to me by somebody. He looked me up. He looked at my background, and he decided that he could trust me. But Steve also had the idea to document himself, and I was just in the right place at the right time.
Very good.
So I spent 4 years documenting the process of making tequila, growing the agave, the haciendas where they make the tequila, and the town called Tequila. Who knew there was a town called Tequila? And the culture of Mexico, because tequila is one of the few things that actually unifies it. I was working in Mexico as a journalist for 20 years. I was born on the border, and I found out I knew nothing about Mexico compared to how rich and complex it is. And it's almost like you go over that mountain to the other valley, and there's a whole new language, a different culture, different foods. It's pretty complex, and tequila is one of the few things that does unify the country. They grow the agave for 8 years. It has to be 300 pounds. It's only allowed to be grown by law in Jalisco State. These guys work 365 days a year. I'm sorry. They get 1 day off, and they go to the Virgin de Guadalupe parade. They live on the grounds. It's very feudal and medieval. This is they don't make tequila like this anymore. They stopped doing this 5 weeks after, but tequila is 9,000 years of cultivation. It's the oldest alcohol in the hemisphere. It was a sacred elixir of the Aztec. And the way they evolved making tequila was digging pits in the earth, and men would get in naked and pull out the must. They would stir it, and they would pull out the must, the fibers. After crushing these 300-pound agaves, the juice was what they're stirring. And they built this in the 1800s. This was the first distilleria, and that's the oldest electricity also in Mexico. That light bulb at the top there was the first working electrical circuit in Mexico. Anyway, it turns out there's a natural occurring bacteria on your skin that triggers the fermentation. So think about crushing grapes in Italy with your feet, same deal. So I just shot the life in the hacienda. We met this woman on the street. She's a, you know, when you're doing long-term stories, it's about access, what he said. And we saw her with some friends, and I thought she looked interesting. We made friends with her, and she introduced us to the whole group of important people in the town of Tequila and Guadalajara, and we're friends today. That woman has since passed away, but she was like the den mother of the tequila distillery. And this is what happens when you drink too much tequila, which I can't really drink anymore.
You get naked and fall
You just, I mean, there's a long story. There's long stories to all these pictures, but I know we're almost out of time here. Prior to Fearless Genius, this was a project I didn't want to do. I had shot conflict and famine in Africa and lots of stories, and it just seemed like nothing had changed. I didn't want to go back. And a friend of mine said, you have to see these kids perform. They'll blow your mind. And I went to see them at the Joyce Theater, and they did blow my mind. And they got me thinking, it was as if they were exercising their pain and demons on stage. And these are kids whose whole families were wiped out by AIDS, or in some cases, half of the orphans, their families had been murdered by Lord's Resistance Army. And so I went backstage and I started talking to them, and my whole attitude changed, and I just decided I didn't understand how they could be so joyful and so positive and have had such suffering. Even though this sounds cliche, but I had seen this for years and years, but I really got it through these kids. And I decided I had to go back to Africa with them, to the orphanages, and also to visit where they had come from, to understand them, and that became the journey. So I went with 8 of the kids to their home villages, and then we had these incredible experiences. There's 2 million AIDS orphans, by the way. That's the first thing you see in every town and village. There's 2 million AIDS orphans in Uganda. This orphanage, by the way, this looks sad, but they get 3 square meals a day and a better K-12 education than my kid got in Mill Valley. These kids pass on what there's 20 orphans doing a dance tour in the US every few years, and they raise millions of dollars and support 700 orphans by doing that. And they go back to the orphanage and they teach the next group of kids their dances and how to do this and that. So that's been going on for 15 years. This woman has AIDS and refuses to take her medication because it makes her ill. So her daughter is already in the orphanage because they know her mother's about to die. And I do think this changed my whole perspective. I mean, there were so many things you could say that were cliche, but these kids were so, like, they put a line over what had happened to them in their childhood, and everything was about education and building a life going forward. And it really was about the power of positive thinking in an almost spiritual way. Thank you, guys.
We're going to transition to Mark's work, and then we will have question and answer. The reason we're doing it consecutively like this rather than breaking for questions is because I think it will be interesting for you all to see parallels and contrasts in approach to long-term projects.
I am super humbled by this man's work right now. And however nervous I was before, I'm even more nervous. Long-term projects. I think for me, the idea of a long-term project has to come from the passion of what you want to photograph. And I think if all the universe falls in place and if things happen right, then you know, you're fortunate and you get a long-term project that pays and allows you to continue your passion. I'm going to work a little backwards with this slideshow. I got a phone call in 2013 from Esquire magazine. It was approaching their 80th anniversary, and they wanted to photograph a male of every age from 1 to 80. So one 1-year-old, one 2-year-old, and they called me in to discuss this. And basically they just said they wanted every photograph to be taken in the same style, and it was up, and they were very much enjoying how I'd been working and wanted me to kind of work around that. So all the personal work that I'd been doing in the last couple of years, they saw and decided they wanted, you know, to do something like that. So for me, this was like the greatest opportunity ever. I had to commit for a year. I was going to photograph everybody from politicians through A-list celebrities, musicians, boxers, people in tech, and it was like a dream come true. And then they told me the budget was like $15, and you know, how are you going to do it? So I spent a few months coming up with a way I wanted to shoot these people. I'd been shooting a lot of 4x5 Graflex on the street as a personal project, and they liked that feel of the camera, but because I was going to be traveling so much, it's pretty difficult on no budget to travel with the 4x5 camera and film. So I kind of jerry-rigged this rig. It's actually Hasselblad lens. And a digital rig, and a way that I could set it up in a tiny space, do it by myself, no assistant, no nothing, and just be able to have the person sit there for a few minutes with me and get this portrait. So this was our 1-year-old, and he was a Tongolese refugee, and his parents had just been made legal, and he was made legal, and Esquire did a piece on him about potentially how he could be the next president. So it was our 1-year-old that went, and I'm not got all 80 in here. This kid was interesting. What was interesting for me for this project was that usually when I shoot a lot of celebrity, that's what I'm known for. And usually when you do that, it's almost like these two teams, sport teams. Like there's Mark's team with the photo people, the producers, even the hair makeups, and then there's a celebrity with the publicists and this, and it's like this clashing. And what was amazing about this project that there was no one. Often the celebrities or people just showed up by themselves, and it was me and them, and I got to have an honest few seconds with them. This kid was in Mensa. He was 4, and he asked questions about everything, and it was pretty intense, but it was a nice kid. This kid was a chess champion. I can't remember his name. He was 7. Then we went on to Ronan Farrow. And if you don't tell me that's not Frank Sinatra's son, I don't know what else to say. And what I was trying to do with this was show the way a man evolves from ages 1 through 80. So from Ronan, we go to Aaron Paul, who was in the middle of Breaking Bad, and it was a very interesting time to photograph him. Onto Bradley Cooper. So Bradley Cooper is a good example of this project. I have to go to his house in Hollywood, and I go to his house, and I get into his house, and he says, his assistant says, "Do you want to set up in the garage?" I said, "Yeah, sure." So I set up, and Bradley comes in, and we start chatting, and then we sit, and he says, "Do you want a beer?" And my thing is like, can we just get the photo? Because all I really want to do is get the photo. I know that I'm hanging out in Bradley Cooper's house, having a beer, but I need to get my photo. And he's like, "Nah, let's have a beer." So we sit, have a couple of beers. I'm looking at my watch. I've already missed my flight. I'm coming back to New York. And eventually I said, "Hey, can we just get this photo?" So he eventually he sits for me in a few minutes, and he looks at me, and I think I caught a genuine moment between him and I. And I'm not going to lie and say, "Hey, we're still friends." But in all honesty, we have exchanged a few emails. He's mentioned a few things on Instagram, and I believe that I made a connection with him in that afternoon that was a real connection. So that was fun. Jeter. Same thing, an experience. I get to go to Yankee Stadium. I get to set up. And take this photo. And I'm always looking for something to say that's not shocking, but something to provoke that Jeter smile. I can't remember what I said, but I knew it involved a girlfriend. I feel once again that I managed to capture something there that shows that there was something genuine between myself and my subject. John Hamm was so hungover that there was really nothing there apart from... Smile, John. Okay. And you know, sometimes that works just fine. Peter Dinklage, another one, was, you know, came into the studio, couldn't get rid of him, you know, because we're chatting and there was nobody there to say, like, no publicist to say you got to go, or nobody hassling or whatever. So really, once again, Peter and I spent a really nice few hours together, just talking, and you know, once again, certainly not a friend, but somebody who I've met more recently, and you know, remembers me, and I have a reasonable relationship with. Mike Tyson yawning. I gotta say, I was very intimidated to photograph Mike, but he was spectacular. He was so nice, genuine, and tired. And the one weird thing about Mike Tyson, he smells really nice. That sounds weird, but whatever aftershave he was wearing, really like, I was like, Mike, you smell great. And then he kind of looked at me and yawned. Click. So, you know, this is all happening. What would happen is these would come up really fast. I would be sitting at home and I'd get a phone call that was like, hey, Mark, can you be in LA tomorrow for Dr. Dre? I'd be like, yeah, what time? Oh, can you be there at 10? I'm like, yeah, I think I can get a flight. And basically, I was committed to this for a year. I mean, I had to turn down a lot of ad jobs, other jobs, because timing, I really had to leave myself open for this project, as these people's time frames were really, really tight. Stephen Colbert. Once again, I can't remember what I said, but that's a genuine, are you kidding me? You just said that to me smile, which is cool. Matthew Broderick. All I could talk about was Ferris Bueller, because it was my favorite movie growing up. And I think sometimes you just have to be almost like that fan and go, oh my God, I'm sitting about to photograph Ferris Bueller. And that's probably the look that he gave me then. But sometimes it's just honest, it's how you feel. High as a kite, not much to say about that. Sugar Ray, one of my heroes growing up, just again had a lovely conversation with him, and he taught me a couple of moves, which was nice. I'm only doing on time. Should I go fast?
No, you're doing great.
So here's another experience that just doesn't happen. Going up to Hyannisport to photograph Bobby Kennedy, and going in, and he meets me, and he says, "Do you want to take a walk around the compound?" I was like, "Yes, please." And he takes me to the house, and he's telling me stories about, you know, when JFK, he was so tired the night before the election, there was no consistent feed. So he went to bed around, you know, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, New York time. And all the nieces and nephews ran in the morning and woke him up by saying, "Good morning, Mr. President." And that's how he knew he had actually won the election. And I'm standing there in that room where JFK had slept the night before, and just getting the opportunity to be in Hyannisport and to hear this history from Bobby Kennedy was, I mean, it's just, it's, you know, unbelievable for an immigrant from Scotland. Cornel West, brother Cornel, another amazing experience, just to get an hour of his time and ask him what you want to ask him, and hear what he has to say, and then, you know, get to take his picture. This makes me really sad because I think it was one of the last formal portraits of Robin Williams, and you know, immediately I meet him and he hears my Scottish accent and he goes straight into Mrs. Doubtfire. And I'm a human being. I'm blown away that I'm in his presence and he is doing Mrs. Doubtfire to me. And then he does Billy Connolly to me. And, you know, his Scottish accent is so much better than my Scottish accent. And you can just see there's this man is genius, and, you know, being in the presence of genius, I'm sure like you felt with Jobs, you know.
Well, I spent a lot of time with Robin, actually. I shot his 50th birthday and had some dinners with him, and he would just be like a quietest, normal person, and then something would catch his attention, and he would just explode, and you would never stop laughing.
Yeah. And he actually, you know, he gave me a hug when we finished. He said, that was fun. And I was like, yeah. Bill Murray. I need a couple of hours to tell you what he put me through the ringer to get that photograph. But let's cut it short. He made me call him Doctor. And I would say, okay, we good, Mr. Murray? Go, Dr. Murray. I go, okay, Doctor. And he was on a film set, and I'm going to cut this really short, but basically, after I'd finished taking the photo, I said, okay, thank you. He goes, no. I've seen your work. You got to see me work. So he puts his arm around me, and he drags me onto set, and he's introducing me to everybody as his special friend, Mark. And nobody really knows what to make of it. And he's like, this is my special friend, Mark. And I'm just like, you know, to everybody on set, this man, and he won't let me go. So that was Bill Murray. He did just fabulous. So I'm being paid to do this. I mean, not much, but, you know, I just want it out there that this is a long-term project that I'm actually being paid for. And there's nothing in the world that could have made me more happier or more happy than going to take these photos. George Foreman was really interesting. He asked me if he'd heard about a little fight he was in called the Rumble in the Jungle. I was like, yeah, I know about it. But lovely to spend some time, and I met 4 of his sons who were all George's, and I met Georgette as well, his daughter. Interesting. Stephen King is one weird motherfucker, let me tell you. Freaky guy. I said, so we were talking, and he was pretty straight, and I said, so let me see that smile you're so famous for, Mr. King, which is one of my lines, and he just produced this, and it was really scary. And there's a shot on my website. I asked if I could have my photo with him. There's a shot on my website where we're standing there, and he just takes his huge hand and puts it over my face, and it's like,
So symbolic.
yeah. But Bill just hitting my assistants the whole time we were there. Just looking at anything that was younger than 22 and female. But once again, you know, with Clinton, there's this bizarre sense of when he love him or hate him, when he talks to you, it's like a beam of light. It's like a lighthouse beam that comes and hits you, and you feel elevated by his aura, a little bit like Robin Williams. And then when he looks away, you kind of feel deflated. Incredible sense of aura, and I really tried to kind of capture that in that portrait. The other thing to say about this, it was a ring light. It wasn't a flash. It was like an 18-inch tube. Am I running out of time?
No, you're doing good.
Okay.
Another 5, 10.
Okay.
We're almost to the end.
Yeah, and it's pretty bright. So, and he just got, I feel like I'm in an MRI. And then just once again, I'm sitting like in a room with Bill Clinton. I'm like, who am I? Bizarre. And this went on for a year. Michael Douglas, this was just after his surgery. He wasn't looking too well, but I think I caught pretty well there. Too Much Sun for
Joe Namath.
Joe Namath. Bizarre character. Yeah. This was also interesting. I mean, we shot this in the Esquire office, and really intense. Didn't really want to talk to me. Pulled out all the stops, got nothing. I mean, I really pulled out all the stops, trying to get a smile or something, but I just got this frown. Harry Reid, amazing experience going to the Senate We photographed Harry Reid and then Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell I don't have in here. But it was like going to Hogwarts. And, you know, starting off in the nice kind of sunny house, the Harry Potter house, and it's all wood paneled and beautiful and everyone's nice, and it was beautiful weather and it was sunny outside. And then Harry's people turned us over to the Republicans, and I swear the sky, this is not, I'm not making this up, it went dark, it got overcast, and Mitch McConnell's people put us in a waiting room with like photos this size of every scary human being that I'd ever, you know, like, you know, Paul Wolfowitz looking down on us and stuff like this. And it was just amazing to have both sides of that experience. Yeah, once again, I'm in the Senate, you know, photographing Senate leaders.
Mark, if you will, bounce, just in terms of time, bounce to the very, to Willie at the very end. Because I want to give us enough time for you guys to have a little back and forth, but we don't want to miss this story.
Oh, sure.
No, you're fine. Just I want to share this story, and then we'll use that as a transition into some more conversation.
So Willie says we can photograph him, and all the details we have are come to the picnic, the 4th of July Willie Nelson picnic concert, and we'll photograph him there. So I get there like when it starts at 11 o'clock. Nobody knows anything. I'm talking to everybody I know about, hey, I'm here with Esquire. All Willie's people will be here. Cut long story short, they speak to somebody who knows something, who puts me on to somebody who knows something. I've got all these bags. Anyway, eventually, okay, yeah, we know who you are. Can you shoot on the bus? Okay, set up on the bus. So I get in the bus and I'm literally swimming through fogs of marijuana smoke. You can't see from one side of the bus to the other. So get my light set up, my eyes are watering. I don't smoke weed, but I've such a contact high, I don't even know where I am. You know, this, and Willie sits there and I think, okay, we're focused, we're good, concentrate, and he won't smile. I said, Willie, can I get a smile? Come on, something, Mr. Nelson, give me something. And he goes, I won't smile until after the last picture. And I go, well, I've taken the last picture. And he does this big smile, click. Gotcha. That's Willie.
So, Mark, how in the next slide? I think maybe it's next two slides. So we'll share how the work ended up being displayed in Esquire.
Oops. Oh shit.
But we'll go back to here, just to give you guys a sense of how the work was used in the final product. And actually, this really is a collector's item if you can find it out there. But to bring it full circle into this conversation about long-term projects, the next slide, I think.
Yeah, so really quickly, I've gone a bit backwards. I was working a lot with this Graflex 4x5 camera. I've done 3 or 4 personal projects. This is one I'm very, very proud, I don't know, but it means a lot to me, where I raised money on Kickstarter and went down to Mexico City to photograph these wrestlers. But what we're trying to say real quickly was that personal project and the passion from that personal project that led me to shooting these up-close, honest portraits, and that's what Esquire saw, and that's what led me to this year-long commission that paid me about $25. So,
very good. You have questions at all?
No, I just think it's really, really important to underline the work that goes in to the work before the work. And for me, it seemed like I had a whole career before I just had such an urge to do something that was longer than, you know, the 25-minute celebrity portrait. But I had no way of figuring out how to do that. I had worked for the magazines until about the mid-90s, and I just knew I had to do longer-term stuff. And I think you all have to, I think a photographer, an artist, anyone has to do something for your soul. Ideally, you align what you're really passionate about shooting, your long-term project, with what you're getting paid to do. And this isn't binary. It can take years, so it's more Kaizen. But for me, I realized to do long-term projects, I had to finance them myself, and I was getting calls to do advertising and commercial work anyway, and so I realized that money could work, and so I used that. And the thing about it that I wasn't expecting was that I got really successful in the advertising work, and it completely took over. So it was very, very hard to do both. But I knew, and I think part of this is the creative process itself. So by challenging yourself to do a long-term project, even if it's never published, you're pushing yourself creatively. And I think every artist has to do that every 4 or 5 years, just blow things up and try to push yourself in a new direction. And it could be a story, like one of these long-term stories, and you're gonna learn from that, and it's gonna put you in a different place and lead to other opportunities. It's like almost a given that you have to do that as a creative person.
Because you both are so busy, a couple things just in general I want to share observations about both of you, and about successful photographers in general. You are both incredibly curious about everything. And you have the ability, whether it's a portraiture situation or just in conversation, to make the person you're speaking to feel like they are the most important person at that moment. And it's a unique skill you both have. And we actually said casual and professional. You both pull that off very, very well. And I say pull it off, I mean it's very genuine. But here's my question that may be informative for the crowd here is, how do you remain curious, energized, busy, and make a living, yet continue to look for projects? What systems, what do you have in place that allows you?
Drugs.
Drugs, okay, yes.
I just got that meditation app recently. I'll tell you what works for me. I have ADD, and I know that because my son was diagnosed with that. I have a very short attention span. I have so many projects that I've been working on for 20, that Fearless Genius book, it was a 15-year shoot, and the book didn't get published until 2014. So this is the thing. I don't finish. It's really hard to finish these projects. I have one in the Basque Country. I have one in Japan that I've been working on, and the one in Brazil I showed you. So it's not a problem finding projects. It's the hard thing is the discipline of finishing them and making a living. So balancing
Discipline of starting them.
and starting them. Yeah. I wrote this essay, if it might be helpful, called "On Chaos," that you can. That's about trying to find that balance. And the danger is that you burn out. And that's why I think it's important to figure out what you're truly obsessed with doing and trying to work towards aligning that and learning to say no to the things that make you sick to your stomach. Also, the thing that I learned was to put a business plan together. If you're going to do a project like Fearless Genius, write a business plan and follow that plan. Get other people's money. We actually raised money in 2009 to do the scans, and then we were able to get the editorial process done through that. And now we're out pitching corporations to get company sponsorship, and we've got a couple sponsors, including Leica and the Associated Press, and we have a couple more lined up that we think we're going to close on. That will help us.
Getting money from Leica is like blood from a stone, just putting that out there.
I didn't say money.
Yeah. Well, moving on. One of the things I find, I'm looking if we're on the same page with this, or photographers, especially emerging photographers or college graduates, have a portfolio that speaks to a general audience. And then the work that they are often offered is not for them in particular as a photographer, but for a need that the client has. At what point did you find that magazines, corporations were coming to you because of what you want to do? What did you do to make that happen?
Well, I created what I call my "fuck you" portfolio. I just use
his portfolio.
You're asking these existential questions that would take hours over beers, but I will. No, literally, I was in the late '90s, and I was thinking, typically you put together a portfolio that you think will get you jobs, and I was starting to get into advertising, and I had a really great agent, but if you're going to go shoot, or if you're bidding for a campaign for babies or cars, you'd put babies and cars in, depending on that. What I came to realize was that if I didn't want to be for everybody, I realized. I just wanted to be for the smartest creatives who had the best budgets and appreciated what I saw. I wanted to be hired for my eye, which they didn't typically do. They hired you for your reputation, and then they'd make you shoot against your own eye. And I decided that was a death spiral. So I created this book that was bound. It was probably the first bound portfolio because agents always wanted you to be able to change it up. And I printed it 16 inches upright. It was bound. It was kind of a suicide mission, and everybody thought that would fail. Well, that's what did it. That's what got me over into the getting hired for my eye, and it worked.
And Mark, did you do the same thing with the Graflex work?
Yeah, the late great George Hertz. Am I I saying that right? George. Amy, is it George Hertz? The photo editor that just passed recently. George. George Pitts, I'm sorry. I went to see George Pitts, the late great George Pitts, early on in my career with a portfolio, mangled portfolio of everything. And he said to me, "What do you want to shoot?" And I said, "Well, I want to shoot portraits." He said, "Well, you haven't got any portraits in here. You have photos of people, but you got no portraits." So I'm going to go against Doug a little bit here and say, present what you want to shoot. But when you put it out there, what you want to shoot, and definitely when I started, putting a lot of the Graphic stuff out there, Instagram-wise or whatever-wise, this is what I want to shoot. Now, I have clients that come to me today that have been coming to me for years that ask me to shoot 180 degrees from anything I've shot for myself in the last 10 years, but they pay the bills, they're good clients, and every time I work for them, I try and push them a little more towards what I feel would be better, what I feel is more me today. And my attitude is, as long as I can win one battle, then it's worth me doing.
I actually agree with that. I don't think there's ever a perfect shoot. And if they ask you to do something that isn't your normal thing, that's good too, because you're pushing out of your comfort zone. I'm referring to that mindset where I had this one art director say to me on a shoot, "You're the first guy I've ever hired to shoot what you shoot in your portfolio." So I think you show what you want to shoot. That's what I'm saying, and maybe I wasn't clear. Put in the portfolio what you're truly passionate about, but then be prepared not to work for 6 months because you're so special. And it's, you have to support that idea with a solid business plan that has cash flow for you to survive while you're presenting the portfolio you really dream of. Be practical about that. But yeah, be prepared to, everything's a compromise in professional photography.
Totally. My favorite is, "Oh, Mark, you lost a job because they didn't think you could shoot real people." Oh yeah, because celebrities are so fucking easy.
Everyone wants to put us in a box. No, everyone wants to put us in a box.
Well, they only shoot celebrities. I'm like,
there's a categorization that happens, especially in the U.S. In Paris, not so much. You wake up and you're a photographer. But in the U.S., people specialize.
yeah, it's like, the old scenario, this might have been another George Pitts, told me, you have a portfolio of the most beautiful fruit photographs ever. You've got beautiful bananas, beautiful oranges, beautiful apples, and one guy's got a shitty photo of an orange in his portfolio, and the art director needs an orange photo, and that's the photographer they go with. Because often, unfortunately, the people that are commissioning have no real...
I think when you get your MBA, you become visually illiterate.
Yeah, exactly.
To branch out, before we open it up to some question and answer here, I'm interested, you have both photographed some of the same subjects in terms of the political and celebrity world, so maybe some stories there, but specifically what I'm interested in is what have you learned from the people you photographed, from the entrepreneurs, from celebrities or the wrestlers? What have you taken from them?
Anyone that Doug's photographed got really scared afterwards. I always... here's a little circular thing again that, I spend so much time... 9 out of 10 times when there's publicists or other people on set, everybody's going, we're having a conversation and it's genuine, and the subject and I are talking, and everyone's going, can we hurry up? Can we hurry up? Because I ask a lot of questions. And it's played out really nicely recently because I've started to do more directing, more video, and I've just done a couple of pieces where I was actually the director who had to ask the questions. And that was really nice for me because it felt like something I've had to, been doing in the background or that was never incorporated in the work was all of a sudden being incorporated in the work, where I'm getting to ask questions about things I'm really curious about this person, and the answers are actually being used on a wider scale than just me. So 20 years of asking questions to make people smile or laugh or look shocked is actually paying off in commercial work. Was that anything to do with what you asked?
No, it did,
I think it touched on it. No. I think I learned so much in my career. Everybody I photographed, I learned something from. Some of it about how to live well. I spent 2 years working for Robert Redford, and he made me hire his daughter to be my assistant. And looking at how I would watch him edit films and talk about Amy, yeah. She worked with me after 3 years. She said, "I know now that I don't want to be a photographer." But watching how he managed his creative career was really instructive, and that was helping me figure out how I had to focus myself creatively to get what I wanted. But I got good advice from Steve Jobs, who showed me how he was writing his business plan, which I didn't want to learn anything about business, but later that came in handy. And I once asked Ross Perot, who Steve would leave out in the hallway waiting, and so I felt bad, so I'd go up and talk to him, and I said to him, "Mr. Perot, I'm thinking of actually starting a company, you know, around my photography. What do you think I should do? How should I go forward?" And he looked at me and said, "Son, I have one word for you. Equity, equity, equity. That's why I have $3 billion.
Well,
And that was his great advice. I have other stories, but that was good.
let me grab the controller real quick, and we're going to go to some question and answer. Let me use that actually as a little transition, Doug, to say, for both of you, what's the biggest change in the industry from when you had when you produced the tequila book, or from when you first started? What's the biggest change for you, whether it's what clients are asking for or your point of view on what it is you do? What's changed the most?
Digital revolution is what's changed photography for me the most, and I embrace it. It's another project. We'll talk about that another time.
Talk about that, though, Mark, for a moment. I'll move through them. It means you have to constantly reinvent yourself, right? Or that it's always about what's coming next, or no? Am I wrong on that?
No, it's about what we have to do to, you know, I know how to create an Instagram story. I know what the specs are for a Facebook video. I know what the specs are for, you know, for all these social media channels. I know what, you know, banner sizes are, because I know that when I'm shooting a job, it's not just we need this, but we need this, and then it's going to be used for this, 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 and this, and this. And if you educate yourself on that, you'll find that you're going to do a lot better in supplying what the client needs. So video aspects. So can you shoot video? Yeah, we can shoot video. You know, can you make a Facebook story from it? Yeah, we can do that. Can you make a GIF? Yeah, I can do a GIF. So all these other
It's not enough
things.
to just be an incredible photographer. You've got to be able to be a producer, a full production house.
Yeah, we have help on the jobs that have budgets, but often the jobs that we're passionate about and really want to do don't have the budgets. So, you know, you're put in a position often now, it's like, hey, you know, do a photo for a magazine. Now you have a choice. The magazine will run it as you send it, because nobody has money for retouching. So you either retouch it yourself or it looks shitty in the magazine. What are you going to do?
Well, I agree that the biggest change for me in my career was digital. And I shot my first digital camera in 1981 at the Super Bowl. Wow. It was a 90th of a second exposure and 5 minutes to refresh.
4 megapixels.
Yeah, it's not even. It's like 1 megapixel. But no, the biggest thing was digital and switching to digital. And I've always tried to approach digital creating metaphors from film. And my hunt is for the perfect paper that looks like silver gelatin. And the great printer Eric Luden is here, who has helped me so much make the prints sing the way I want them digitally to silver gelatin. But the biggest change, I think we're at an inflection point right now. I'm getting phone calls every day for months from photographers, famous photographers. The whole industry is changing. Digital has lowered the barrier to entry. It's also really exciting because I think 1 billion people came online with cell phones last year. So it's unleashing human creativity. Everyone's a photographer, and I find that really exciting. I think it's incredible. I love it too, but all the trade practices that were protecting me as a professional, when I was a full-time photojournalist, we had certain accepted practices, and you had guarantees, and the day rate was the day rate, and you never spent money out of your own pocket, and we were sending film on private jets, you know, back to Time magazine. So the budgets and budgets and budgets and budgets keep getting lower and lower, and the trade practices have been crushed in every aspect of professional. So commercial photography, all bets are off. Corporate, the same. Photojournalism is crushed. Fine art, oddly enough, hasn't been touched by digital. That's a very, very hard field to get into, but it's like anything else. If you really want it and you're willing to kill your mother, you can have it. It's that.
If you, Karen, so going back to the projects, it is so important that the initial passion and what you care about it is that you're willing to do it whether you're being paid for it or not.
I think what you're saying is, I was getting a long way to the point of, this brings us back to visual storytelling. This is what I think. I think storytelling is central to being a human being. It goes back to our beginning, and I think visual storytellers who can tell a compelling story and then figure out how to put that into a business model, that's the future for photographers. And in a sense, we're no longer making a living as a photographer, we're consultants, because we're gonna be hired by brands and corporations to tell our stories as a marketing piece, and then you can then use that as the Da Vinci's, as the Medicis were sponsoring Michelangelo. These are our Medicis, and there is something important for the culture if it's properly done. It's the PBS model, brought to you, Charlie Rose is brought to you by Bank of America. So I think anyone here who's a storyteller, you need to figure out how to tell the best possible story, and then look at corporate funding, look at grants, look at Kickstarter, look at friends and family, figure out how to write a business plan, go get an SBA loan. There's $30,000 for you, waiting for you right now today if you can write a 5-year business plan built around your story. They give up to $100,000 grant. I got an SBA loan for 100.
Yeah, Mark's ready to go. Yeah, the line suddenly got longer. I'm getting the
money talks.
Yeah, I'm getting the high sign on time, so I apologize on questions, but I'm going to ask them one last question, which I think will benefit the group, and these guys will be available for question and answer at the end, off stage. Here's the last question. I want to know, guys, what's something that you... I
have to go apply for this guy.
You wish you knew about loans. No, what's something that you know now that you wish you had known at the beginning? When you started your career, what's something you know?
Keep your overhead low.
God, I'm stumped. Yeah, I know, but that's too obvious and weird. All right.
We may have had a conversation earlier. Yeah, I like the answer, but there could be other.
I'm going to be brutally honest, and you're all going to freak out and say, meh, meh, meh. But genuinely, my biggest, and I've said this before publicly many times, my biggest regret in photography is not discovering Leica cameras earlier in my career, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Genuinely. Leica cameras changed the way I shot, changed the way I felt about camera companies, changed the way I felt passion towards going into my camera bag to take out my camera. And I wish that somebody had exposed me to them, even as a student or an upcoming photographer. I was never exposed to them, and it's made me feel part of something very, very special, and that I would say is one of my biggest regrets. And that's genuine.
So I didn't actually know we were going to end on exactly that. I can't ask for a better ending.
Bye.
But thank you. I want to first thank you both for sharing.
Nice going, Mark.
What's that?
Can I get?
Nice. Thank you. Thank you.
No, I believe that. I agree with you.
So thank you all for your time. These guys will be happy to, one-on-one answer a few questions or in small groups up here for a little while before they have to catch a train. But I'd be remiss if I didn't point out, to Mark's point, that you have until 8 o'clock tonight to go try a Leica. So I encourage you to do that. And then we do this again next week, Wednesday to Sunday, if you want to come back. It's free of charge. It's really one of only 2 places in the country that we give you that opportunity.
Can I just make another plug? I'm teaching a workshop, a master class called The Photographer is Entrepreneur at Photo Expo on the 27th of October, if anyone's interested in going deeper onto this subject.
Thank you all very much.